Baxter, editor of Retail Leader, and welcome to Trend Talk. Every week on Trend Talk, we identify a retail trend and break it down with an industry insider. This week, we're looking at the retail supply chain. And with me today is Laura Ritchey, Chief Operating Officer at Radial, an omnichannel commerce technology and operations company. We're going to dive into the current state of the retail supply chain and talk about some of the ways the industry can rev up innovation with leadership. So Laura, welcome. I'm super excited that you're here today. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Amy.
I would love first if you could just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about Radial.
Sure. My name is Laura Ritchey. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Radial. And what we really do is support premier brands in apparel, health and beauty, electronics, support the customer from post-click to what I call post-purchase experience. So that may be helping make sure the order gets directed to the right place, picking and packing so we can send the item to the customer, and then following up if that customer has a question and calls into a customer care center. And that sort of end-to-end is really where Radial partners with our brands.
Awesome. Well, I'd love to start with sort of an overview of the current supply chain status quo. So the COVID-19 pandemic obviously accelerated a ton of supply chain issues. Could you walk me through what are some of the current supply chain struggles that retailers are facing?
Absolutely. So, you started it off by saying it correctly that we had, I think, in the supply chain, a lot of roadmaps about what the future might look like, but COVID-19 certainly accelerated those. So e-commerce basically became the only channel available to many of our brand partners in 2020. And so they had to pivot to be able to manage through that situation. What we found is that really the demand far outweighed the capacity that's available, whether that was going to be how product made it to the United States, how we were able to ship it out to customers' homes. And you still see that, right, in labor availability, in warehouse availability, in shipping availability. And I think those are challenges that we continue to see in 2021.
Yeah, how are retailers getting around that? Especially when they had to rev up so quickly and adapt like overnight almost. So how do retailers do?
I think a couple of different ways, right? So what we're seeing is more effort around demand shaping. So when are sales happening? Are those happening earlier than traditional holidays like we would expect them to have? Do we have people where we're saying you can wait for your order? So maybe you want to take advantage of those lower sale prices, but you can wait until you receive your product. So that's helping to kind of smooth out what we would call the peaks of different holiday periods that we see throughout the year. I think there's also an acceleration of automation. So people continuing to look at what they can do in the supply chain to help things go faster and partner with our workforce to deliver results even faster. I think finally, people are looking to partners like Radial who can provide scale and flexibility and do so quickly while we adapt to what the new normal might look like as we continue forward this year and into next.
Yeah. Besides the automation, have you seen any other innovations that have sort of come out of the necessity to just accelerate and ramp everything up from the pandemic?
Yeah, I think the other thing that we're doing is continuing to look at where you can take time out of the process. So whether that's continuing to get more efficient, going faster from the ports to the warehouses to the customer's door. So the teams are being pretty innovative about how just to take our processes and think about what we don't need to do to really make sure that we can deliver with speed.
All right, cool. So one of the positives I've seen coming out of the pandemic is that businesses have taken some time to reflect on their values, their culture, and in a lot of cases, just their missions. And I think we're seeing a lot of pushback on this on the labor side in particular. Some of that is also being driven by consumer demand for sustainability, different values. But how would you rate the business environment for women in the supply chain as a woman leader?
Right. Yeah, I think to me, it's a great time, right? First of all, supply chain, like many industries, is in desperate need of talent. And so as we continue to look for the right talented people to join the team, we've really seen that women bring a lot to the table. I think the ability to embrace a challenge and to look for ways to problem solve, collaboratively decision make to get things done really is a great time for women to be coming into the supply chain for these types of roles. I think the other thing that's interesting is you can start in the supply chain at all places. So we have all sorts of success stories of people who've come in at an entry level and who've made it up into leadership levels, with people who've come in from leadership levels and continued to advance in their career, or people who've joined the business and have made this a career for life in the role that they are. So a lot of flexibility also in the supply chain opportunities.
Awesome. So could you talk a little bit about why it's important in general just to have women in leadership positions in the supply chain program, or have a diverse leadership in general? I think there's a ton of emphasis on diversity right now as well.
Absolutely, and that's no different for us at Radial, right? So I think it's important to have diversity of thought at whether that's gender, whether that's race, whether that's sexual orientation, and so that's, I think, incredibly important to us. And so one of the things we think about is how do we really embrace all of those different ideas and get them to the table? So one of the things that we've done is make sure that we're focused on having women in the right roles. So we have promoted or placed a bunch of women over the last year into site leadership roles at our fulfillment center, and we're really seeing that pay off. And so as we continue to do that, I think that will resonate with our teams and with our clients.
Awesome. And how are women making the supply chain programs more successful? I think maybe that's a tricky question, but there's so many different challenges right now that it's super exciting to hear that more women are getting into these roles and interested in the supply chain system.
Yeah, as I alluded to, I really think that there is an expertise around multitasking and driving for decision making, and understanding that decisions have to be made with imperfect information, and then also being able to react on the fly when things change. And so I think that agility that we particularly see in some of our women associates, as well as across our leaders in our fulfillment centers, is important and really differentiates the results that we can deliver.
And so what would you say that businesses can do better to support development of women in supply chain and help solve these ongoing retail struggles?
Yeah, I think the first thing you have to do, and you said the right word, is develop, right? So it's important to identify both women with potential but other candidates with potential, and make sure that we're developing them and that we're planful about providing opportunities for stretch assignments, for experiences that will help grow them and shape them as a leader. For example, it's important to understand financials, right? If you're running a fulfillment center or a customer care center, you need to understand how to do so in a way that makes sense for the business. And so ensuring that we have opportunities for women and our other leaders to learn those skills is an important piece of what we're focused on.
Awesome. And then I always like to end on this question, but what are your predictions for the future of the retail supply chain?
I'm excited. I think that there is a lot of opportunity with change. And so the fact that we've accelerated this shift to e-commerce creates opportunity for us to think about and challenge ourselves to do things differently. I think the pandemic showed that we can do that. And so I'm really looking forward to the future and for opportunities that will be available for women and women leaders, as well as across the supply chain.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think there's a ton of opportunities and change as well, especially with all these challenges that we touched on. But Laura, thank you so much. I think that's all the time we have for today. We'll see you back here next week with another retail trend.
Thank you, Amy.